This is the Double Edge Factor, where high performance meets peace of mind and faith meets focus. I am your host, Rob Manuel, and peace and blessings unto you. Before we get going, be sure to like, follow, and hit that subscribe button, because the more positive interactions you put out there, the more they push this podcast to people who've never heard it before, which, of course, will allow us to grow, reach new ears, and have a greater impact on more people around the world. And if you want to perform and live at your highest level, head on over to rodmanuel.com. That's RODMANUEL.com. Join that email list and be sure to like, follow, and subscribe. Last week, we spoke on the subject of leadership starts in the bloodstream, and the double-edged message was, every meal is a decision about the future version of you. Food can either fuel leadership and longevity, or quietly sabotage both. Stop eating like convenience is the priority and start eating like your life, clarity, and responsibility actually depended on it. So in the last 7 weeks, we've covered a lot. We talked about self-leadership, private discipline, healthy responsibility, avoidance, biology. But none of that matters if it doesn't turn into structure, because awareness without structure leads to inconsistency. You can feel motivated today and fall right back into the old patterns of tomorrow. That's why ownership cannot be emotional. It has to be systematic. Ownership is not about how you feel on a given day. It's about what you do consistently, regardless of how you feel. And the system is simple: measure, strengthen, regulate. 3 pillars. That's simple. No fluff, no complexity. Just a repeatable standard you can apply for the rest of your life. Because you see, strong men don't drift into discipline. They actually build systems that force alignment. All right, let's start off with measure. You cannot improve what you refuse to measure. And many men living off of assumptions instead of data. I think I'm good. I feel fine. I'll deal with it later. That's not strategy. That's actually guessing. Measurement removes guessing. It gives you a clear picture of where you actually stand. At minimum, you should know your blood pressure, your A1C, your lipid panel, your vitamin D levels, your resting heart rate, your weight measurement. These are not random numbers. They are actually indicators of how your body is functioning. They tell a story about your habits, your stress levels, your consistency. And once you have the data, you can make informed decisions. Not emotional ones, not reactive ones, but strategic ones. Measurement creates awareness, and awareness creates control. Okay, let's talk a little bit about strengthening. Once you measure, the next step is to build. Strength is not about appearance. It's actually about capacity. It's about physical capacity, mental capacity, and emotional capacity. And that capacity is built through consistent action. So strengthen your body. You lift weights 2 to 3, maybe even 4 times a week, not just to look strong, but to become resilient. See, muscle supports metabolism. It supports your joint health. It supports your long-term function. Next thing, move daily. Walking alone improves cardiovascular health. It reduces stress and it supports recovery. Strengthen your nutrition. Prioritize that protein, increase those whole foods, and reduce the processed foods that disrupt energy and recovery. See, this is not about perfection. This is about consistency. Because every time you train, every time you move, every time you fuel your body correctly, you are just reinforcing strength. And that strength creates margin. Margin to handle stress, margin to recover faster, and margin to lead at a higher level. And third, regulate. This is where most men fall short. They can push, they can grind, they can perform, but they don't regulate. Regulation is what protects everything that you're building. Sleep is regulation. You see, 7 to 8 hours sleep consistently. So what that does is this is where the body resets. This is where your mind sharpens. This is where the recovery happens. So think about stress management. Stress management is actually regulation as well. Not eliminating stress, but controlling how your body responds to it. What can that look like? So that could look like prayer, stillness, breathing, moments of separation from constant input, reducing that alcohol and other stressors is also regulation. Because not everything that feels like relief actually restores you. Regulation is what keeps intensity from becoming destruction. Without it, the system breaks down. With it, the system becomes sustainable. So Nehemiah was tasked with rebuilding the wall, a massive responsibility at that time, a broken structure that needed restoration. But he didn't approach it emotionally. He approached it with structure. He inspected the damage, he assessed what was needed, then he created a plan, and he executed it with consistency. Of course, there was opposition, there was pressure, there was distractions, but he stayed focused on the process. Piece by piece, the wall was built. And that's the model: inspection, strategy, execution. Ownership requires all three of them. Not intention, not motivation, just process. All right, at this point, you've got everything you need. Not more information, you got a standard. So now the question becomes, what are you going to do with it? Because listening doesn't change anything, application does. This is where you draw the line. You book those labs, you track the numbers, you train consistently, you protect your sleep, and you regulate that stress. Not occasionally, but as a standard. Because strong men don't drift into better lives. They actually decide, they commit, and then they execute. The ownership standard is not about perfection. Because, see, you'll have off days. You'll have those moments where they are not ideal. The difference is you return to the system again and again. Because the system creates stability, and stability creates longevity. With that, I'm going to leave you with today's double-edged message. Men who lead others must first lead themselves, and that includes taking full ownership of their physical and mental health. Your family, your influence, and your purpose deserve a version of you that is strong, disciplined, and built to last. And here's the thing. If this episode or anything from this entire series, just take this. This is your moment. Not to just be inspired, but you need to decide. Decide that your health is not optional. Decide that your leadership starts with you. Decide that you no longer ignore what needs attention. I'll say it again. Measure it, strengthen it, regulate it. And that's the standard, and it starts today. So, here's the thing. If this episode or this series, anything from the last 7 episodes added value, clarity, or even one push you needed, share it. Share it with the men in your life who need to hear it. The only way we grow this podcast is when you guys share it. The more you share, the greater impact we can have on more people around the world. And If you want to perform and live at your highest level, head on over to rodmanuel.com. That's RODMANUEL.com, where you will find resources, coaching tools, and more to help you live, lead, and perform at your highest level. You can also order a copy of my latest book, Faith on Demand, which is also available on Amazon, as well as other exclusive content. And as I always say, be intentional with your words, be intentional with your thoughts, and be intentional with your actions. And always find a way to be a blessing to someone else today.